Hello, my name's Tonya. I'm a personal trainer and a mum of 5. This is my podcast, Live Yourself Better, and it's for busy people just like you. Hello everyone, how are you? How's your summer going so far? I'm sorry it's been a little while. I've actually had a bit of an issue with my podcast recording platform, which was Spotify for podcasters. You can no longer record podcasts on there. So everything I knew about recording podcasts has just been blown away, and I had to find a different platform. So if it sounds slightly different, then that may be why, but I'm hoping it doesn't sound too much different. And today's episode is going to be all about sustainable health and fitness. There's a lot of talk about sustainable health and fitness. I know when I set up Live Yourself Better, that was one of the motivating factors behind it, was to be able to create something that you can keep doing. But I see it everywhere now, and I think it's really important for us to understand what is meant by sustainable health and fitness. So I will go into a little bit of explanation around that. I'd also like to talk about how making changes and changing habits can be really supported by changing the habits of the people you live with, your family members. So we actually have a holistic approach within the household, and that will give a higher chance of success. So I'll talk a little bit about that, and also as well about swaps. So this is something that I did when approaching the changes that I made for myself and for my family, and I found it really, really helpful to consider, because as we know, approaching health, fitness, nutrition in an all or nothing way creates problems because it's not sustainable, and we get into a vicious cycle, we get into a roller coaster, or the worst place we get into is we don't make any changes, we do nothing differently. So hopefully I'll be able to shed some light on all of that for you and give you some helpful tips. So, why is sustainability important? Quite simply, the short-term bursts of intense exercise or restrictive diets might show some results initially, might show quite good results, but they're rarely sustainable, and what that means is we can't keep up those results. So inevitably what happens is we burn out, become frustrated, and return to old habits. Sustainability, on the other hand, allows you to build healthy practices into the fabric of your life, which leads to long-term health improvements and overall well-being. And it's really common sense, actually, where we lay down habits, things that we do again and again, we become used to doing them, and they become part of our daily life. You may have heard in series 1, my episode about changing habits. If you haven't listened to it, go and check it out, because that talks all about how we change habits and how we build in habits into our routine, and things such as, well, there was a time when you used to have to think about cleaning your teeth, but now I'm hoping that it just happens. You don't really need to think about it. So actually, where we build sustainable habits, we avoid that roller coaster of dieting, of health and fitness, where we're either all in or we're all out. And we know that studies have shown where people have lost weight and then tracked them 6-12 months later, they've gained back the weight and some more. So what I would say to you is, before embarking upon a programme, or obviously paying money to take part in a programme, then there's some important things to consider. So think about what your goals are and how much you're going to be able to keep going with this programme. Now, some programmes do offer the option to extend, so you can keep that level of accountability going for as long as you're willing to remain on the programme. And a good programme will allow you to do that. The real challenge, I think, is becoming accountable to yourself. And we know that it can take around 9 months to change habits. So if you're going to enter into a programme, potentially look at the length of the programme. And I think also, whilst before and after photographs can help to visually see a difference, somebody before they did a programme, someone after, yes, we can visibly see that they have physically changed shape, they've lost weight, that it's also a good thing if you are able to speak to someone who's perhaps a year, 6 months, 2 years on from having done that programme, and find out where are they now, what things are they still doing, what things were successful, what things did they take with them, and did they maintain any of those health benefits. And also, we can't just measure a programme based on the aesthetics of fitness. Whilst weight and waist circumference are important factors in health, risk factors for things such as type 2 diabetes, we can't just use those metrics. So if you do find programmes that will clearly demonstrate that they can improve sleep, lower blood pressure, lower your risk of developing certain diseases, and those things can motivate you to sustain those changes. So some tips for how to actually make changes stick, and there are some key strategies. I like this one because starting small really chimes with the idea that we are looking at the progress and not perfection. And I know that's become also a very well used saying in recent months and weeks, but it's something that I really firmly believe. And actually, where we're having polarised thinking, we're either all in or we're all not, then it's really, really not good for health. So starting small with manageable changes, if that's something like adding a 10 or 15 minute walk into your routine, or swapping certain sugary drinks for either low sugar or diet drinks or for water, then that's a change. And as long as you have a plan for how you're going to achieve that, so it's not just I'm going to do this, as long as you have a plan, which I've also spoken about in previous episodes, using a SMART goal approach, so specific, measurable, achievable, realistic and time bound or time measured, then you have a higher chance of achieving it. So for example, if I was to say, right, I'm going to go for a 15-minute walk on 3 evenings a week after dinner, and then it's looking at, can I do that? Is it achievable? Will I be able to sustain that? What happens when it's winter? What will I do? Will I still want to go out? Plan ahead, think things through. And also, I find it helpful to have a schedule week by week. I actually put things in there that I'm going to do. And on the days when I can't really get out and exercise, I will do something like write on my schedule 50 squats or 50 press-ups, and do that throughout the day, and I'll tick it off as I do it. So even if you're not able to get out to the gym, get out to exercise, it doesn't matter. As long as you've got your body, you can do exercise. Find activities that you enjoy. So I have spoken about this before, but exercise should not feel like punishment. Explore different activities. Perhaps there's something that you haven't done since you were younger. Perhaps there's something that you've always wanted to try. What's holding you back? If it's something that you can overcome, then go for it, try it. There are also often low cost or free activities available locally, so it's a good idea to have a look on Facebook. There's often groups there. There may be walking groups. There are a couple that I can think of that are close to here, and they're free to join, and you just have to join in the group and look out for the times of the walks. Now, the next tip is making it convenient. So, as I've mentioned, scheduling things in advance. This can help with meal planning as well. If you are going out swimming, then make sure you have your kit prepared. Put it in the bag. Put it with the towel in the bag the night before. Put it in the car. Put it by the door. So you shouldn't trip over it on the way out. To remind yourself, don't really trip over it, by the way. But that's the kind of thing that I do. I put it in a very obvious place that says I am going swimming. In terms of meal planning, then that's something that can be done on a weekly basis. And I always say this, people think of meal planning and again, the thought process can be very all or nothing. Am I referring to having a meal plan where you have 7 days of the week, 21 meals plus snacks, perfectly planned out and coordinated, and you will absolutely stick to that and not deviate from it? No. That personally, that's not what a meal plan is for me and for my family, for the simple reason that being part of a family or living with other people or having commitments, it means, or even being on your own, right, means stuff happens and unexpected stuff happens every single day. So what I say is, where people haven't been using a meal plan or scheduling meals in any way, or even planning a shop, then again, start small. Perhaps you could plan in a week, perhaps start by planning 1 or 2 evening meals. Make it something simple that you can prepare, but do try to stick to those. And if it can't happen on Tuesday, then say, can I make that on Wednesday instead? So you do end up making those meals in that week. And if it comes to the fact that, say, you're eating a lot of processed foods or takeaways, if you've managed 1 meal that you've prepared yourself in a week or 2, you will gain health benefits from moving away from the processed food. With snacks, if you tend to reach for a packet of crisps or a chocolate bar, if you don't do that on 1, 2, 3, 4 occasions in a week, then that's an improvement on reaching for them every time. And I think that's something what people sometimes find that hard to comprehend, that we can make small changes every day. In the same way that eating a packet of biscuits is not going to ruin your whole diet, nor is having a home cooked balanced meal going to create your whole health outcome. But what it is, it's the increments, it's the small steps that we do along the way that build up to create larger totals. And also, if you have a day where, I've had a really bad food day, right? Well, no, you haven't. What's happened is you haven't made the best choices. But try to reset that same day. So if, for example, breakfast and lunch, you haven't made the best choices, why can't you make a good choice for dinner? Or a better choice for dinner? There's no reason why the whole day has to become written off. And again, that's the all or nothing thinking that perhaps the diet industry has a real vested interest in keeping us thinking this way, because it disempowers people, and it makes people think, well, I can't do this on my own, I need to pay somebody or pay to go on a plan. And whilst it can be very helpful to have accountability, the most powerful thing is to become accountable to ourselves over time. Now, speaking of that, having an accountability partner, joining a fitness class, finding peer support, joining a club, joining a group, it can be really, really motivating and encouraging, and it can help you to keep going. So absolutely, I encourage that. I think anything that's going on locally or online that you can be part of, whether it's free to access or whether you're able to pay, then I think it's really, really helpful to be going through this with others. And I do know of people who are happy to keep paying to do something, to have that accountability, or happy to keep going to something. Keep going. It becomes part of your life. But again, this sustainability, if we start off as we mean to go on with an understanding that the things we do, we're trying to embed them as habits. We're trying to take these things on board for life. It's not a fad. It's not a sprint. Then it's almost liberating, because it puts you fully in control of saying, what am I going to do? What am I going to keep? And I think there's also an experimental element to this, where you might try something along the way, and then you might think, actually, that part's not for me. I can't keep going with that. But it's having an open mind. It's being willing to try new things. And and just to see where it takes you. And I think the other part is not beating ourselves up. There's so much of pressure, I think, that we place upon ourselves, and we don't necessarily celebrate our wins and successes. It's that hyper focus on, oh well, I didn't make it to the gym, I didn't do this, so therefore I may as well just not, because I've failed, and that kind of thinking is really unhelpful. It's okay to say, today wasn't great, this morning wasn't great, even this week wasn't great, but let's move forward, let's start again, and don't let things fester, because that's how we end up back on the roller coaster. And I think it's good to understand your own motivation as well. What is your motivation? What's the thing that really inspires you to make changes? I've spoken before about my own health challenges, loss of a relative at a young age, and my children, and realising that I was beginning to have health issues which were related to being overweight. And I knew that I could be in a better position health-wise, and so therefore that motivated me to make the changes. The other things for me as well is sometimes, like, if I've watched hospital programmes, where you see how the anatomy and physiology works, and where you can actually see when they're doing an operation or something inside, and look at the organs and think how precious life is, and how fortunate and blessed we are to have things that work and have a functioning body. And those things motivate me as well, because I don't want to get to a point where I'm told that it's too late, that something isn't working anymore. And I do appreciate we haven't got full control of that, right? So people have things happen to them that we just can't foresee. But I always think, but why not try and be the best that we can be? And that's not perfect, and I can guarantee and assure you I am not perfect. And that's the other thing as well. In terms of sustainability, I think look at your coach, look at who runs the programme, what are their lifestyle challenges, what's their lived experience, what will they be able to understand and support you with, who have they supported before. And it's no good for me trying to shoehorn people into my way of life. That wouldn't work, because it's my way that works for me and for my family. So it's being able to support people, help you to understand what works for you and what elements will you be able to keep doing. And I think that any good program will be able to do that, instead of it being prescriptive and telling you that you must. And those things can almost indicate that, I don't know, I think that in terms of sustainability, just picture yourself, will I still be doing this in 3 years' time? Will I be able to do this myself? And that can help to guide you to see whether to embark on going for a particular routine or regime. And I often get asked by people, what do you think about this diet? What do you think about that diet? What do you think about this? It's really, really difficult, because I don't wish to cast opinions on things or get into particular conversations. Usually end up saying to people, have a look at the evidence, have a look at what people who've come through the programme, chat to them, and just see how it instinctively feels for you, but also look at the reasons why. And if it's, for example, I'm trying to lose weight to go on holiday in 3 months, then, not to say that's a bad goal, there's no such thing as a bad goal, goals are goals, but what does 6 months look like? And then next year, do you have to repeat this process again before you go on holiday? Perhaps we can look at how to weave in some changes that will be permanent changes. Now, it may not be the same outcome, they may not be as much of a weight loss, and that's the other thing. It's understanding where can we be for optimum health, but also where can we be that we can keep going with, because there's nothing worse than putting a strain on the body by getting down to a weight which isn't sustainable, quite frankly, and then all the way on again. It just puts a real strain on the system. So it's far better to find a middle ground and a compromise, and something that you can keep going with. So, how long does it take to change habits? Well, it can take anywhere from days to months, and that probably doesn't feel incredibly helpful. But the main thing to know is that it will depend on you and it will depend on the complexity of the habit. But the key is consistency. So, the more that you repeat the desired behaviour, the stronger the connections become in your brain, which will make it easier to stick with in the long run. Which is why, for example, introducing some short walks, reducing sugar intake, increasing water intake, whatever it needs to be, but just aim for something that's simple, that you know that you can do, and that you can review and say, did I do that? If I didn't do that, why not? If you try and change too many things at once, then you're going to decrease the chances of succeeding. Now, for some people, it's an approach that works, a complete life overhaul, but it depends on the motivation for it. So, for example, if somebody has is very obese and has been prescribed a very low calorie diet, and you may see those. I see them on YouTube sometimes. I think it's like My 600 Pound Life. So where the doctor has to prescribe a really, really, really restricted calorie diet. But actually, it's because somebody's on the verge. They may have become immobile. And he says within about a year of someone becoming bedbound due to obesity, within about a year, in his experience, they will be dead. So someone's motivating factor there is, if you don't do this, you will be dead. And so that actually is a huge motivating factor to somebody to be able to reduce the calorie intake to a very, very low level in order to be able to make those sort of health gains and the weight losses. Now, of course, for all of us, health is a matter of life or death, but it may not be as quick as that. It's something that builds over years, and all of these habits that we put into place, I think I've heard it referred to before as a health pension, and I really like that, because whilst we might think of saving money for our future, we very, very rarely think about saving health for a rainy day. And that's really what making small changes and small adjustments is about. It's actually making gains in the long run. And okay, so we can't see them, and so it's difficult to think in that way. I think it can be helpful if you put up post-it notes, if you put up pictures, if you have quotes, if there's anything that you have around that would be really motivating to you, to remind you of why you want to change, why you want to do things differently, then make sure that they're visible and make sure you remind yourself of them. We know there's often a battle between long-term goals and short-term desires. So we might crave instant gratification of unhealthy snacks. Actually, I'm reading from notes that I've made, but I don't really like to say unhealthy. I prefer to say choices that we make. So it might be unhealthy choices or not the best choices, because actually food in itself, it's not good or bad, but it is the choices that we make around food. That's where we are empowered to make those choices and make those decisions for our own health, where we have that choice. It's not always, people don't always have a choice. Sometimes people just eat what they have. But where we have a choice and we can make a better choice, then we are empowered to do so. So health and fitness being sustainable, it's a journey, and there will be bumps along the road. But if you keep a positive mindset, keep self-compassion, then you will be able to build those habits and to empower yourself to reach your goals. But more than that, just to make those small changes that will create better health for yourself in the long run. Okay, so it's not really as successful to make sustainable changes without getting people on board, and that means people that you spend your time with, people you live with, people you look after, your children, maybe your parents, your friends, anybody around you really. Actually, and I often recommend a whole family approach to health, fitness and nutrition. It does mean compromise. Not everybody will want to change to the same extent. But for example, in my house, so we looked at fruit and vegetables. I get them from the local green grocer and fruiterer, which is Harvest Fruit and Veg in Boldmere, because I noticed they're better quality than the supermarket. They're not stored in gas, which means that they don't just go overripe all of a sudden. And my kids will eat them and they really enjoy them, and I really enjoy them too. I'm not a massive fan of fruit, but I eat a lot of it from there because it's just nice. And I realised that I wasn't a massive fan of fruit because I couldn't really taste anything in the fruit, whereas I can when we buy it locally that way. And because we're not throwing any away, I don't think there's any cost difference. In fact, something's less expensive there, but really the health benefits are so much greater because it's then easier to eat more fruit and veg. The other change that I looked at the carbohydrate intake. Many people consume too many carbs, which can put a metabolic load on the body. So we looked at that and whether we could make any changes in terms of fibre as well. So for example, going for 50-50 bread. Instead, we don't buy white bread in this house anymore, but my children will eat 50-50. Some of them will eat whole grain, wholemeal. So now what I do each week is I'll buy 2 loaves, which is the 50-50 bread and the wholemeal or whole grain bread. And I say 2 loaves a week. No, it's more than 2 loaves because we do get through quite a lot of bread, with there being 6 of us in the house. But not a mass, not huge reams of it. But certainly there needs to be enough for them to have toast and things in the morning. And with the sandwich, actually the 50-50 bread instead of the white, I don't think you can really notice. The other thing as well, if I make a spaghetti bolognese, I've always maybe grated up some veg and put that in the sauce. But instead of having all the spaghetti, I might serve it with some shredded carrot or courgette, 50-50. What I started to do was actually just put the grated or shredded vegetables, or you can use a spiralizer. I put that out on the table and I didn't realise if the children would eat it or not, but they help themselves to it. It's there. I'll talk about that in a minute, how we serve our food. And the other thing is looking at the sugar and salt intake. I've never really been a person that's added salt to food, but in terms of sugar, if the children would have been having sugar on their breakfast cereal, I'm not going to say, but it wasn't me that got them into that habit, but an older relative many years ago for the ones that did, and it kind of stuck. So it's just a case of gradually coming away from that. And also in terms of the sugary breakfast cereal, I won't never buy it, but I'm certainly more conscious of going for things that don't have the added sugar in. And the children have accepted that, it's fine. Also go for like low sugar ketchup, low sugar, low salt baked beans. I've been able to make those changes and my children are happy with that. They haven't moaned about it. They seem to have accepted it. So it's possible to do those, to make those changes. And actually that fits in with what I was going to talk about in terms of swaps as well. So when you're looking at changing habits, perhaps look at things that you can just swap. Can I swap that for a sugar-free version? Can I swap that for some additional vegetables? Can I, if you're making a cake, or if you're making a naan, a chapati or something, can you use some wholemeal flour, 50-50? We do that too. Put 50-50 of the wholemeal and the regular flour, the white flour in there. And it's fine. As I say, there hasn't been any issues. The kids have not complained about it. So it's just doing those things that you can keep going with in the long run. And how we serve food. So I just wanted to tell you a story about a lovely lady I met a few years ago. So when my oldest was maybe about 3, and then my second was probably about 1, I used to volunteer at like an environment centre near where we lived, and I used to meet all kinds of people. And there was an older lady who was, I think she may have been in her late 80s or even 90 when I met her, and we started talking about food. My 3-year-old at the time was going through a really, really, really challenging time with food. She would only eat a very, very small set number of foods. There really wasn't much variety. So I was kind of really, in a way, struggling. Well, 2 ways really. I kind of understood that it was a developmental stage, and I believe that it's an evolutionary hangover from back many years ago, when children were able to roam freely for themselves. I remember reading an article that actually it's protective, that they suddenly start to not want to eat everything, because once they were allowed to wander off around the place, if, for example, they found some berries and ate them, it probably wouldn't have the best outcome. And I read that in a parenting magazine many years ago. So I kind of told myself that this is a phase, and it's something that they will come out of, but it's still really, really difficult. And this does relate as well to making changes. I do appreciate that me saying, okay, make changes as a family, when if your children really, really like, chicken nuggets and burgers, and that's about all they're going to eat. But even with that, I'd say try and add something in. So have the chicken nuggets, add an extra vegetable, try it. Sometimes they need to have things in front of them lots of times before they'll try them. But it was a difficult time, because I love food, and I really wanted my child to have that passion as well. And I just wasn't seeing it happen. So this older lady, I spoke to her about it, and she said, I have 8 children, and none of them were ever fussy with food. And I said to her, wow, would that be because there wasn't as much food to go around, so they couldn't really afford to be fussy? And she said, well, maybe that was a factor. She said, no, really what we did was, instead of plating the food up for them, we used to serve the food from dishes in the centre of the table, and they would help themselves. So they would choose the amount of food according to their appetite, and it always worked well. And I said, wow, that's amazing. So literally from that day on, I remember going home, and I made a beef stew, and we decided to separate it out, and then to ask our child, what do you want? I think it was 1 potato, 1 carrot, and 3 peas. I mean, okay, that's a very small amount of food, you can see, but we're not saying anything, we're just going to do it. And it was all eaten. And then second helpings was asked for. And it was just like an epiphany moment for me. I'm not saying that this would be the same for everybody, and who knows, maybe it was just a lucky moment. But what I did decide from that moment onwards was that the children would be choosing the amount of food from the centre of the table. And the benefit to that is you can add extra things into a meal. So, for example, if we're having fajitas, I've started to add in more avocados, tomatoes. We have different colour peppers, so red onions. All of those things increase, add some lettuce. And when you put the bowls out on the table, they will be inclined to try something. If they don't try it, or sweet corn as well, try it that first time or second time, seeing the siblings eating it or seeing an adult eating it, become curious and say, oh, okay. And I think this is the same thing where we're asking family members, friends, relatives to change habits. We're not asking them to give up what they do. We're potentially introducing something new alongside things that people are already used to. So it's not a case of anybody feeling like restricted. But of course, over time, things can be replaced, and the balance of things can be adjusted to the point, again, that it's sustainable. So I really am very, very thankful to that lady. And that was many years ago. It's 2009 now. So just brilliant idea that she gave, and something that's really, really worked for me and for my family and for my 5 children. And there is one more thing that I want to cover, with it being the summer holidays now, and sustainability and change of routine is something that can be really challenging, whether that's going on holiday during the summer or whether that's if you're like me and you are working from home whilst looking after the children through the 6-week holidays. Just can I give a shout out to my employers? Well, I'm self-employed, but my contracts, who are amazing and who've really understood and have given me some brilliantly flexible work through the summer, which is really, really helpful. But more than that, it's a case of trying to keep on track with things and doing the things that I can do. Now, as anyone who's looked after children will know, the days can be quite stressful. I'm not going to be someone who's saying that I'm winning at life every day with this. I do find the summer holidays, or indeed any long holidays, to be very hard. It's difficult to balance everyone's needs, to keep everyone entertained, as well as kind of not feeling guilty about not being able to do everything for everyone. So the way that I try to do it is by making sure that I've got a backup, a plan B for when it's just too exhausting to cook, so that might be having something in the freezer. And also I like my treats, so I did put up a little reel of the frozen yogurts that I like to make, and I will actually, on the reel I only had a couple of cherries, but I will eat quite a few pieces of fruit with the frozen yogurt as well, just to bulk it out a bit. But I need to have those things because for me, I just couldn't live without having those, I would say treats, but I do enjoy them. And it's not, I don't live like a monk lifestyle, certainly, with any of this. And that can be harder in the summer. But things like frozen ice lollies, if you can get the sugar-free ones, you can make your own. If you use sugar-free squash and just freeze it in the moulds, or just even ice throughout the hot summer, I find it's just really, really nice to have either water or a diet drink or a sugar-free drink with ice in, and I'll crunch the ice. I mean, that's a bit of a stress reliever. I'm not sure that my dentist would be too pleased with it, but it does help. And it's sometimes just getting through those days and making time for exercise if you can. So, for example, tonight I'm going to go swimming to Erdington. The children are with the dad, and I just want to shout out to Erdington. The staff there are so friendly. Like, it is my go-to leisure centre now because I just find that they're so welcoming. They remember things, they'll answer the phone. I'm just really pleased with Erdington Leisure Centre. So that is where I prefer to go if I'm going for a swim, if I'm going to the gym. I will go to others as well, obviously, but that one, it's very convenient and it's just pleasant. And I'm going for a swim to de-stress just because I enjoy it. It's not linked today particularly to any health goal. I don't have any expectation about how long I'm going to go for or that I must do this or that. It's just going to be really nice to get in the water and to not have to think about things. So it's trying to find those little moments of peace in amongst the chaos if you are busy looking after children, and to know that then soon enough the new term comes and things become really, really busy again, but just trying to keep in some of those habits. And to remind yourself of why you're doing them and why they're helpful, because yes, it is easy to reach for the quick fixes. The food manufacturers love us to do that because it lines their pockets, but it doesn't improve our health, it doesn't improve our children's health. So keep in focus. If you can involve them in cooking, if you can involve them in chopping up fruit, then do that. You know, they love to help, children love to be involved. And there's some very simple recipes. There's a book called 1, 2, 3 Cook that someone bought years ago. I think my auntie bought it, maybe for my sister. I've got it now. And it's just 3 ingredients for each recipe. It's things like that that can really entertain the kids and can help them to get an interest in being in the kitchen and preparing food. But anyway, I've gone off on a tangent now. I'm going to go. It's incredibly hot here. I think I need to open some windows. I keep forgetting to do that. But I never know. Is it that it keeps the heat out in these old buildings? They say that, don't they? When it's very hot outside, keep the windows closed. I think it's cooled down a bit out there now. Right, anyway, enough waffling. I'm going to go. I shall see you next time. Hopefully, if I can get my podcast recorded again like I have today. And I hope you've been able to hear it with no hitches. So I'll see you next time. Take care. You can find my website, Live Yourself Better, at liveyouyou better, better.biz, and you'll find links to all of my social medias on my website. See you soon.